Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2020. It is 12:58 p.m. Washington State Time. I am Master THONG LAI, sending the warmest greetings to compatriots in the country and abroad. I was just done performing a funeral ceremony for my Buddhist follower disciples, including praying, viewing, and waking ceremony. I like to spend some free time responding to some unanswered emails from the previous day related to the situation in North Korea. The situation of the upcoming war taking place in the South China Sea, and lastly, the situation of the Chinese coronavirus. I would like to invite you to listen to me reading this email. This email is from a group of young Buddhist followers whom are living in the United States, in Denver, Colorado. Dear Master, today I want to send an email representing a group of second-generation young Buddhist followers of the Republic of Vietnam who are living in Colorado. As all the television stations, news agencies, including the U.S. Attorney General mention, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un had a stroke and is currently suffering from a brain damage. However, during the previous live stream session in the past few days, Master is the only one that said that Kim Jong-un had recovered. Therefore, I emailed to ask Master, what proof do you have to indicate that Kim Jong-un is completely recovered? While many radio station forums in the United States and around the world, including the U.S. General Attorney, said that President Kim Il-sung had cerebral palsy. What grounds do you base it on to declare Kim Jong-un recovered and there was no cerebral palsy? We wish you great health. Signed by a group of young Buddhist followers of the second generation of the Republic of Vietnam. Let me tell you, during a live stream session last week, I announced that North Korean President Kim Il-sung had a political ministry meeting to replace many personnel. Kim Il-sung had eliminated all those officers in the political ministry who have been installed by Chinese communists for decades. As you remember, China has been supporting North Korea since the time of Kim Jong-un's grandfather, his father, and then Kim Il-sung has 3 generations. From the life of Kim's second son during the Korean War in 1950, and then the armistice agreement was signed by Pyongyang. Right after that, North Korea closed to the outside world. The main source of food and energy to feed the North Korean is supported by the Chinese communists. Since the beginning of the Wuhan coronavirus, North Korea, under Kim Jong-un, commanded that the only country that ordered to shoot down any Chinese who ran across the Chinese border to North Korea. Kim Jong-un knew well that the P4 laboratory of Wuhan is where the Chinese synthesized the coronavirus. He also knew about the virulence of this virus. Therefore, he did not hold back on banning the Chinese to enter the country. If one day the Vietnamese communists declare that they will close the borders with China and shoot down all Chinese communists who cross the Vietnamese border, that is the day Vietnamese communists are free from the Chinese communists. In my opinion, Kim Jong-un is a communist dictator who is envious for power, wealth, and evilness. When he took over the power, he did not hesitate to kill his stepfather. He purged the people who were not part of his fraction. However, he was educated in Europe, got a university degree in Switzerland. He understands democracy and has a patriotic heart. Compared to the top leaders of the Vietnamese communists, Kim Jong-un is much more heroic and patriotic. Therefore, he decided to branch off from the Chinese communists. Kim Jong-un is much more heroic and patriotic. Therefore, he decided to branch off from the Chinese communists. You can see clearly between him and the U.S. President Donald Trump had made secret treaties, covenants, and only the U.S. President and Kim Jong-un knew. My disciples who are living in Colorado asked me the reason I believe that Kim Jong-un had recovered, while the U.S. Attorney General also said brain damage, and many media agencies in the United States, in Europe, and in Asia believe that the president of North Korea had a brain dead. First, the only country that informs that the North Korean president has suffered from cerebral palsy is South Korea. You should remember the news from the South Korean government said that, according to South Korean intelligence monitoring, there was no unusual activities nor change in leadership in North Korea. The nearest and best observer was the South Korean intelligence agency. It was South Korea that declared that Kim Jong-un had no brain damage. I announced that it was the first source I relied on. On the other hand, all U.S. media and forums, they all used to get news from the Chinese Communist Party. Why did the Chinese Communists release this news? What was the reason for this news to come out? Because the Chinese Communist Party wanted to force Kim Jong-un to reappear. On April 11, 2020, Kim Jong-un attended the meeting of the North Korean Communist Party to announce a personnel change, which I mentioned that earlier. That North Korea would replace many of the people in its political bureau. These officers are the people who were installed by Chinese communists, just like they did to the Vietnamese communists. A few years ago, Major General Jong warned and was forced to retire early. On April 11, when the president of North Korea announced that he would be changing some personnel in the political bureau, the Chinese communists sure were very bitter. Because of the intelligence agents of the Chinese communists was well infiltrated in North Korea, Kim Jong-un did not appear ever since to avoid the surveillance and assassination. He is protected by a very skillful task force ever since he took power. Because of the replacement of the 8 Chinese spies in the political ministry, the Chinese media reported that he had brain damage in order to force Kim to show up on TV so Chinese intelligence agents present in North Korea can kill him. And the second source I base on is that I follow the U.S. President Donald Trump. The situation in North Korea and the President of North Korea are very important. If the President of North Korea is at risk of cerebral palsy and no longer can run the country, South Korea would have sniffed right away. However, the South Korean newspaper said that there was no upheaval in North Korea. They did not believe the source of the North Korean president had cerebral palsy. Please take a look at President Donald Trump. When U.S. President Donald Trump had sent a condolence speech to the President Kim Jong-un in a press conference, at that time, you should notice that the North Korean president has cerebral palsy or dies. However, The attitude of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, was very calm. When the press reporter asked if he knew something about Kim Jong-un going to the hospital and having brain damage, President Trump said that he knew nothing and he wished the President of North Korea recover soon. I rely on South Korean sources to deny the illness of the North Korean president. The South Korea intelligence agency said that there were no signs or indication of replacement or collapsing in Kim Jong-un's government. Furthermore, the U.S. president remained unchanged when the press asked him about Kim Jong-un's condition. The president said he had no news whether the North Korean president had a stroke or had a brain damage. He had no information, however, he prayed that the North Korean president would overcome this crisis. I declare Kim's condition based on those two sources. I can say that the president of North Korea has recovered. In last week's live stream session, I was the first person to announce that North Korea, Jong-un, had changed some important political personnel. As I speak, the news of the North Korean president having a stroke are all over the media. This news was launched by the Chinese Communist Party itself to force the North Korean leadership to reveal himself. Think about it. That is the judgment of Master LAI. And it is up to you to believe it or not. I was the only one who confirmed the changing personnel in the North Korean political ministry. And then a week later, it was rumored that Kim Jong-un had an operation and suffered from cerebral palsy, which was informed by many media networks, including the U.S. Attorney General. However, the U.S. President Donald Trump was not in condolence to the President of North Korea. You should know that when the North Korean leader shook hands with the President of the United States, he always had a secure line, a system of encrypted communication in case he got executed by the Chinese communists. He trusted family members like his sister would contact the President of the United States for help. I already foresaw this when he changed his staff. That is the opinion of Master LAI. Here is another question. 10 days ago, I had a live stream regarding the U.S. B-52 bomber leaving Guam Island. One of my disciples, who was working in the United States military base in Guam Island, announced that all B-52 on Guam Island took off. At that time, my disciple did not know the reason for this event. During that time, the situation in the Southeast Sea was tense. Chinese communists were sending LAI aircraft carrier, refuel tankers, and all escort ships down to confront the Malaysian water. More than ever, it is necessary to have the presence of U.S. B-52 in the area. Why did the United States withdraw the Roosevelt to port at Guam Island for sailor isolation and now relocate all the B-52 bombers? At that time, the Buddhist followers who was working in Guam told me that he did not know the reason the U.S. Air Force removed all the B-52s from the island. This morning, he informed me that he now knows the reason. The first reason is, in order for the B-52 to take off, it requires a very long runway because of the heavy payload from carrying bombs. If there was a war, the Chinese communists would shoot their missiles at Guam Island. There would be some damage before these B-52 can take off. For that reason, the U.S. Department of Defense had recalled these B-52 aircraft back to the military base in the United States and replaced them with combat aircraft such as the F-35 so that they can take off vertically like combat helicopters by rotating their axis. Because of these advantages, there's no need for a long runway, and they are very versatile. That was what the Buddhist follower who is working on Guam Island told me. I asked him if there's a war and the Chinese decided to send the missiles from the mainland of China to Guam. It probably takes a good 15 minutes to reach the targets. Isn't that enough time for the B-52s to take off? He said yes and no. If the missiles fires from mainland, the U.S. intelligence will immediately detect and shoot it down before it would reach Guam. However, many of the Chinese submarines from Hainan have besieged around the islands of Guam. A rocket fired from one of these submarines takes only 5 minutes to reach Guam. 5 minutes is not enough for a B-52 to take off. That is the updated reason why all B-52s on Guam Islands have been relocated absent from the South China Sea. So the war situation is getting closer. We can see clearly that the United States cannot ignore 40 to 50,000 innocent lives of Americans who died in injustice without a good cause. There is no good reason for the President of the United States to ignore these deaths. The Chinese Communist also has no way to avoid its crime upon the world community. Their fleet is in Malaysia, but 2 American destroyers are also in the South China Sea area to warn the Chinese Communist vessels. With the news U.S. jet fighters, it will take only 15 minutes to take off to protect Malaysia. As of now, the Vietnamese Communists have no other option. Either side with the United States or with the Chinese. However, siding with the Chinese means to sell the country to them. All the drilling rigs have been handed over to Xi Jinping, and Xi Jinping has to choose the path of war because he cannot survive without dispersing the frustration of his generals. Most of the countries in the world have sided with the United States to file lawsuits against the Chinese Communist regime. The amount of the petition had been steadily increasing, and Chinese Communists has no other way out of this mess except to choose the way of war. War is the only way to clear public opinion and to gather all the Chinese division as one and to harmonize against foreign invaders. And the issues of Taiwan was once a province of China. Xi Jinping himself said that the day Taiwan declares independence is the day Chinese army will attack. President Tsai Ing-wen changed the passport name from the Republic of China to the Republic of Taiwan, saying it is one thing. But she gave 3 different passport designs to the National Assembly to choose. This is a humiliation to Xi Jinping. The day the National Assembly of Taiwan votes on a new passport form, it will be the day Xi Jinping will lose his face. It is the end of the talk. I want to reserve a little bit of time to talk about the painful day of the Republic of Vietnam. April 30th is also the disaster day for the United States. From January 21 to now, the number of infected Americans has reached nearly 1 million, and the number of deaths is nearly 50,000. Unfortunately, this figure can be no higher, according to the U.S. Health. Unfortunately, this figure can be higher, according to the U.S. Health Organization and the United States CDC organization. We are Vietnamese Americans. We must be grateful and thankful. We must stand firm to support the President of the United States. He is fighting against the Chinese communists. He is fighting against the Chinese communists. He also means he's destroying the Vietnamese communists. If the Chinese communists exist, the Vietnamese communists still exist. The Chinese communist regime must end. I urge you once again, those who are U.S. citizens, please vote for President Donald Trump so that we can lean to the power and strategy of the United States. This time, the world community are recognizing that Chinese communists are the enemy of genocide in the world. We can terminate the Vietnamese communists without organizing any army, because we use the power of the United States to destroy the Chinese communists and Vietnamese communists as well. That is the goal of the Vietnamese community overseas. I want to send my warmest regards and wishes to you for safety during this pandemic in the United States. Farewell.